What's the role of B2B gambling media? How do we fairly report on the market and keep people happy? How do we survive as a business and hold on to our journalistic integrity? All this and more on the GI Huddle. Well, hello again, listeners. Welcome back to the GI Huddle. We're going a little bit left field for this one. We just thought it would be a great opportunity to introduce you, the listeners, to some of the challenges that we have going on here day to day. Just the challenges that we generally face in reporting on the market fairly, while also making sure that we don't upset too many people with the way that we report on the market, but also keeping our clients in check as well, and dealing with issues such as, when people try to be too self-promotional, or when saying things that might upset somebody who may be one of our highest paying clients at the same time. So quite a few things for us to talk about, but firstly I will introduce you all to our team who are back for this one, the GI editorial team. So first of all, here with me, a man who will never miss a chance to be self-promotional. It's Tim Poole.
Oh, fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Second, a man who loves gambling media almost half as much as he loves horse racing. It's Nathan Joyce.
Hello, how are we doing?
And third, the perfect man to charm any gambling insider client. It's Matthew Enderby.
That's me. Hello.
So just thought we'd start off just by talking first of all about our own backgrounds, because working in this particular role in B2B media will be quite different to anything that we would have done before. So just thought we could go around and just talk about your backgrounds coming into this role and how different it's been while you've been here.
Former sports journalist, very different to B2B. Obviously some similarities, and we work with sports betting companies, so there's a lot of an overlap. But yeah, very different. I once had a job working at home, essentially 60 hours a week, clickbait, getting readers from all over the world.
You were a clickbait whore, as they call them.
60 hours, get the violin out as well.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very different now. I've also been a football coach, which was much better. I worked at Ladbrokes, where I got my first taste of the industry, and now I know a lot more about different parts of the industry, but certainly it was an eye-opening experience working for one of the biggest operators in the UK. That's me done.
Yeah, sort of similar to Tim. I worked for William Hill out in Gibraltar, doing sort of like email marketing and looking after the website and the app. So obviously a very different role. Prior to that, did work experience for Lincoln United, 9th tier of English football. I'm sure we've all heard of them. I worked for Oddschecker as a content and marketing exec.
So my job here at Gambling Insider was my first step into the gambling industry. Before this, I was working down in Brighton for a TV station there doing local news. So while that had its fun points, it also sort of got very samey very quickly. So it'd just be events happening in the city, just all kind of things going on down there. Also at the same time, we were covering Brighton Hove Albion Football Club, so it was an exciting time to be doing that, because they were just fighting their way up to the Premier League. So I go to press conferences there. So a bit of a sport background, but more sort of general local news, and now in the gambling world.
Yeah, and in my own case, really, it was just from having a personal interest, because I did a sports journalism degree, graduated 5 years ago, but kind of fell in love with gambling while I was at university. I used to love going to casinos. I fell in love with poker. I used to love betting on sports as well. So this was one of the few industries where I would have gone to cover it from a B2B angle. Was a staff writer here for 2 years, then went away to do a diploma, did some other things in B2B journalism as well, went into the sports industry for a little while, worked for a PR company in the gaming industry for a short while, and then came back here as editor just over a year ago. And actually, it would be a good one to ask Nathan and Tim first of all, because you guys were at operators before. Did you know about the B2B side? Did you know it existed before you came across Gambling Insider?
So I personally knew it existed before coming across Gambling Insider, but at Ladbrokes, no, there was no necessary mention of it at our level. So our level was kind of more sort of IT, website management. I think it's something perhaps the marketing teams and the execs would have known more about or dealt with more.
Yeah, very much the same. Knew about it, but it wasn't something I was particularly involved about it with my role at William Hill. So yeah, it was quite fresh for me and very different to what I was doing before.
I hope that's the answer you were looking for.
No, absolutely. Well, I think
the script's away.
I think it's interesting to look into kind of how people are getting into the industry, because I think what you said there, Tim, about the clickbait issue is that I think this is particularly the case when you do a journalism degree and you see all the work experience opportunities that come up. There are so many where it's like, write so many articles a day for this site. You've got some of the new kind of sports journalism websites that have tried to kind of challenge the more established names by just getting so many writers in and getting them to write so much in a day, and it's purely focused on the number of readers as opposed to the quality of journalism. And you even get it now with writers who go to the Nationals, and I know they're on a requirement to write 10 stories a day, and they can never really produce the best possible standard because they've got so much to do, and you can't really understand each story as well as you can. So I just wonder, are there any particular nuances or things that are different about doing B2B that you've found to be so different in terms of getting into it, or as opposed to when people try to get into B2C?
So from my perspective, there's a lot of difference. So are we talking getting into it or the actual job itself?
A bit of both.
So I suppose getting into it is different in the sense that, like you said, if you're a sports writer or you want to work for Nationals, you have to start from the very bottom and sort of start sending things in, for free, things like that. And on the job itself, there's some differences, and there's some really good things about B2B journalism, in that the amount of exposure or coverage we're allowed with companies and with CEOs, and a lot of times CEOs will be individuals with a net worth of multi-million, and they'll be more important, really, more influential than sort of players who play for a certain club. But if you're a football journalist and you go to a press conference and you speak to a manager, they don't treat you so well. They look down on you, and the players, not everyone. You can have good examples, you can have bad examples, but there's a lot of advantages to sort of a B2B setting from my experience.
Players and managers don't really want to be there, do they? But when you set up an interview with the CEO, they want to sort of be part of it, which is why it sort of plays into your hands a bit more in this side of the business industry.
Yeah, I think as well with B2C, people kind of naturally fall into that a little bit more than B2B. If they're going through uni or just sort of growing up thinking, I want to be a journalist, I want to write about sport or something else, that it's sort of, I think this sort of head goes to B2C audiences automatically.
Mm-hmm. So many people want to be sports journalists, and it doesn't simply happen straight away. So operators offer the opportunity to fall into a football or a sports betting environment and actually pay quite well. So I think that's why younger people when they finish uni, move into these sort of roles.
Yeah, because I think it's affected the quality. I mean, and when we focus particularly on sport, when a lot of people do call out the quality of sports journalism nowadays, I think because there's so many people that are trying to do it, and there's so many websites and there's so much out there, and I feel like with us on B2B, I mean, you do learn from doing it that it's difficult, but it's one of those things you can get there. I mean, if you stick at it for 6 months to a year or longer. But I mean, what I also think is very important though is to have some kind of attachment to it, or to have some kind of enjoyment in the industry as well. I mean, I hear about people doing things like renewable energy B2B, or fire products B2B, or whatever, and that's with all due respect to those industries. Some people
they may be big fans.
Yeah, maybe big fans. But do we think that's an important element as well, in that you have to have some kind of personal enjoyment or some kind of interest once you get started with it, in terms of actually how much you enjoy the job?
Yeah, I think that applies to any job really. I think you've got to have an enjoyment for it, especially if it's something creative. So if you're writing about something, even if it's news, you're ultimately, it's a craft. There's a bit of art to it. Enjoyment is not going to harm in any way.
So the more you enjoy it, the more sort of time you might put into it outside of work. The more you're going to naturally want to read about things or check just press releases or other things that are happening, and stay on top of. Stay on the ball, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'll just go into what is an upside and a downside about doing journalism from this side. An upside is, as far as I can remember, I don't think I've ever been trolled working for Gambling Insider, except for maybe the one time when somebody accused me of shilling for Hillary Clinton for the election a few years ago. But the downside to it at times, and this is one of the big points we're going to come on to, is the handling of clients. Obviously, when particularly when your business model, which ours here is purely based on advertising, we make no money from subscription at all here. So there can be certain issues in terms of what you say about certain things, and the expectation also that people will have at times as to how much control they can have over what you write. So we were just reeling off some names just before we started recording this podcast, and we won't name anyone explicitly in this one. But I just wondered if we could just talk about some of the general challenges you faced in terms of dealing with people at particular companies and how kind of we've gone about that.
It's probably, for me, we try to keep it topical and for every sort of reader to enjoy it, whereas when it's the self-promotional pieces and companies wanting to make them sound like they're God's gift and they're the best thing in the industry, that's when it's difficult, because you're just trying to make a piece interesting and appeal to your whole audience. But when it's someone just trying to be like, we are the best, we're doing this, let's talk about that, that's when the crossover from an interview to a self-promotional piece can be quite difficult.
On the note of trolling, I'd just like to say that one thing I don't miss is the abuse of B2C. I've been called a lot of names. A lot of them I can't even say I can't say them now because they're not PG.
I'm sure we've got the worst, Tim.
I put tips out once for a horse racing card, and someone tweeted in asking for more detail, and when I sent them a link, they tweeted back in saying they wanted to speak to somebody apart from the T-boy. And when it was 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, I'm being called the T-boy, I was questioning what I was doing in that role, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so luckily none of that so far in our time at Gambling Insider.
Yep.
I've been called worse out of work, but T-boy wasn't particularly great at that time in the morning.
I was accused of hating all Scottish people.
And do you?
I don't actually. No,
Just to clarify for the record.
No, I've been there many times. Family from Scotland as well, so
claw it back a little bit.
But yeah, you just have to be very careful when you write about Andy Murray. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what bit were we on? Oh yeah, so in terms of
you're distracted by the trolls.
Yeah, in terms of so I mean Nathan makes a good point, because the thing is, what our magazine has shown over the years, and before my time, from what I've heard from our CEO and from David yourself and from other staff here, is that our magazine does have a reach, and when clients use it correctly, they can get new business. It works for them. But the idea is, the better your article, the more you analyze, the more a reader thinks, wow, this article wowed me. If, like Nathan says, if you say our software is the best in the whole wide world, a reader switches off and thinks that this is and we know there's other publications and companies who don't necessarily have that much of a quality first approach, not naming any names at all, but if you get it right, it's a kind of a more of a long-term investment than a short-term bragging. If you get it right, there's more in it for you, essentially, as a client. It's whatever you want to put into it.
Yeah, and it's confusing because there's all different types of marketing strategies, isn't there? If you want to just do an ad, then just do an ad, like do it that way and sing and shout your praises and, spend all your time and focus it that way. But if you want to be involved in, a feature article or something like that, then it's far more powerful and moving to have something valuable to say, something for the readers to say, oh, look, this CEO really knows what he's talking about. Let me, what's his company? Let's look into this a bit more, rather than just like, oh, he didn't even say that himself. His PR person put that together and then emailed it over to these guys.
Yeah, and you can tell, can't you? And you're going to lose interest and you're going to lose readership, and then that's obviously not what we, not the route we want to go down.
Wins in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, essentially you're enhancing your brand by what you say, what you put into editorial.
Yeah.
I should say the one thing I have learned, if there's anything I have learned in my journalistic career, it's that you cannot please all of the people all of the time, because whatever journalism role you're in, there's some kind of risk of upsetting people, I find, in whatever you do. If you write again about football teams, and you might annoy fans of certain clubs with what you say, or you might annoy managers or whatever, or in the job I had in sport, it was a case of we had to find out the value of deals, and it was something that people weren't allowed to talk about, so we always risked annoying people because this very private information was getting out there. In this industry, it's different because it's people expecting a certain kind of coverage that they might not always get. One of the worst cases I had was about somebody we had on a cover of a Sports Betting Focus a few years ago, where it was a case we did the interview, and then afterwards they wanted to do the whole interview again because they said they weren't prepped properly for it, and there were loads of products they wanted to talk about, and then there was all kinds of toing and froing about what we could agree to, what we couldn't agree to, because it was such a massive deal that had been agreed before then. So I feel like whatever we do, there is always going to be an issue. But on the topic of people writing stuff that's too promotional, we kind of got onto this idea because we feel like we've gone through a record period recently of articles that have had to be sent back. It can almost be a bit like in a restaurant, sometimes sending meals back to the kitchen. But I think, perhaps, and I don't know if you guys agree, perhaps do we need to have a clearer message maybe across B2B media about what's going to be accepted? Because we talk all the time about the industry coming together and deciding here's what we should do. I don't know if maybe it's up to us and other publications to come together and decide a kind of medium for things, because I'm noticing a problem where I think people are getting used to certain treatment with other publications and then they're expecting it with us. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's a problem you could say mirrors the problem that the whole gambling industry has, in that everyone coming together, because certain companies have different standards and different approaches, and sometimes just one company doing things slightly differently can harm it for everyone else. Now, obviously, when it comes to gambling itself, that's you've got sort of serious issues when it comes to kind of breaking the law and fines and things like that. But it's not easy for the gambling industry to come together. So we, on a smaller scale, we kind of face the same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see it as well. Like, if we were to have that kind of meeting and pull B2B public or a good deal of publications together and say, are we going to try and like raise the standard a bit, or figure out some kind of system? I think there's always going to be those that sort of might be at the meeting and say yes, but then the second they're back at the office, it's like, no, it's fine. We'll just put this online. We'll just go ahead and do this, and maintaining that standard is going to be very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously some of us have got different business models as well.
Yeah.
As well. Some might rely more on events, some have subscriptions, some like us are purely advertising. Yeah. So
it's just taking the time to make sure that your copy, depending on where it's going to the appropriate sort of company, and making sure that is suited to the piece. I think a lot of companies write a piece for a certain company and think they can get away with it just because it's about that product, and sending it to sort of a mass audience, where it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You have to be more specific for it to work. So it's just a little bit more care, I think.
Yeah. Just to give everyone a bit of insight, just when I did work for a PR company, this was in gaming, and across the different publications, we kind of took a different approach to each one. So some publications, it was a case of you can say whatever you want in terms of promotion and you'll get away with it. Some it was they'll allow no promotion. Some it was they'll allow a little bit, you just got to be subtle about how you do it. Mm-hmm. But then the issue that I've also had is I have some people who've been around the industry a long time, know the rules, and still try and get away with it, and see what they can do. And even though they know our rules at Gambling Insider, that we won't do things a certain way. So yeah, but then you just kind of hope that people will realise that surely if you do write something that's too promotional, or if you try and give us answers that are too promotional, it's going to reflect badly on everyone, isn't it? Because then the copy's not as good.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. That it's just going to sort of lower the value of the final product, and then people see it as, oh, this is just a bad article, or this, the whole thing just comes.
Yeah, like you said before,
apart.
Nobody wins.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it, isn't it? Nobody wins, and then where do you go from there? So follow the rules.
I guess like buying a treadmill at home. If you don't use it, you're not really getting the most value out of it. But if you're on there working hard and then you've kind of got value for your money, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think sometimes it may be a case of people haven't necessarily worked with a B2B publication before, so the first time you're with them, there might always be an issue just because they need to try and understand it a bit more. But then my advice would always be that if you decided to advertise in a certain magazine, then get a flavour for that magazine. I think would be a good thing before you go into any deal about it. But then, do you think some people will be listening to this and going, "You guys have got your head in the clouds. You need to realise that there is obviously a reliance in some part on the B2B side of this industry and the revenue that you guys make from that. So is it perhaps wishful thinking to think we can have much control over what we do, or too much control over what we do at times?
It's always wishful thinking, isn't it? Because you want everything to go perfect, and that's not the case in any line of work, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're just sort of, it feels like a little bit of a rant here, but it just feels like we're just expressing what we actually want and what we actually require, but we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're making sure that everybody involved, as we've expressed before, comes out on top and wins, and the piece is actually relevant and it goes out to a larger readership and they want to actually get involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it? You're not sending copy back, you're not making a fuss about these things to be difficult. You're doing it to actually achieve something and to make a
for them as much as you.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of benefits these operators who are sponsoring and doing all these type of stuff and paying money to the magazine, and that's like, obviously they are doing all of that, and you're not trying to say, no, you're bad, you're wrong, or this is the terrible stuff. What you're trying to do is saying we can do something much better.
Yeah, the thing is that there is a line you can't cross, and I think what we've done recently is we've shown that line and we've been firm on it. And it's not that we're sort of like ahead in the clouds necessarily. It's not that we think we're better than anyone, but
No.
we're looking, like you guys say, for the best for the customer, for the writer, and for the company.
But just like with any B2C article any of us may have put together that's got some negative attention from somebody somewhere, this, as you say, David, will probably have somebody listening and just saying, these guys don't know what they're talking about.
But I've got no issue with writing something that people disagree with.
Yeah.
I think we published a story the other day about somebody disagreeing with Paddy Power's Save Our Shirt campaign, and you got a few people disagreeing with the general point that was made in that article, but that's absolutely fine, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with people saying,
Oh yeah, you're not
You've
going to agree with
yeah,
everything all the time, are you? Because how boring would that be?
Yeah, and you want to,
exactly.
at the end of the day, provoke discussion, don't you? It can't just
Yeah.
be this same old like general rhetoric again and again, like, or just the most popular opinion that gets published. No, you want to get people thinking,
Both sides
get people
of the
talking,
argument, yeah.
show every angle. Yeah.
I should stress, by the way, we don't have problems with everybody. This is just some people that we're talking about that we have issues with. Some have been around a long time. Some really understand how it works. Some can't do enough to help you when you ask for comment on things as well. I would generally say, I don't know if you guys agree, there's generally a big difference between operators and suppliers, because obviously for suppliers this is their means of marketing, this is their means of getting people to know about them. The operators obviously look towards a completely different market, completely different clientele when they're getting their names out there. But do you guys think if the suppliers were actually more like the operators in how they deal with us, in terms of maybe just, we'll arrange this interview, but you may not be top of our priority list all the time, but once you do have this interview we won't give you as many problems. Do you think that would help solve the problem if they were just a little bit more relaxed?
But I suppose it depends how you define the problem and how big it is, because like you say, it's not kind of, it doesn't affect everyone. It's maybe just certain, and we also must stress there are some success stories. Like recently we had a company who supplied a column, it didn't quite match the criteria. They tried again, and on the third time they got it right. But they emailed me. They were really happy with how it came out, and we worked a little bit harder than normal at it. But there was a benefit for everyone in the end, and that hard work paid off basically because they were patient and they were cooperative.
Yeah. I'm gonna pitch something now, and to some people who work in PR and in marketing, I can almost sense you shaking at the very thought of the suggestion of this, and it's something that I'm thinking about doing. Just want to get an overall team opinion on this. What do we think about banning email interviews?
Yeah, be great. Why not?
It really depends on the circumstances and the story. Obviously it'd be great if you could always do original interviews on the phone, but obviously it's a very busy industry and people are always busy, as we know.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a perfect world that would be great, but yeah, I'm not sure too many PR companies would be on board with that, to be honest with you.
No, they won't be, but it's just about making something look as good as it can. And sometimes
but then we've had interviews before in the past where we've done interviews over the phone,
and then they want to basically do it on email,
and they want to change it anyway,
Yeah.
and it's a longer process, and you still, I know it's sometimes not as original, but when it's there in black and white and they've sent it across, then there is no argument to the changes which need to be made.
But it's like this podcast, for example. If this podcast was me writing the questions to you and you coming back with written answers, would it be anything like the same?
Nope.
No, of course not.
Not that I would accuse you guys of being too self-promotional.
Tim
Well,
loves
you
it.
did accuse me.
So let's just sum up then and say, overall, what's the best approach to take to this? What can be done about the kind of challenges that we face as a B2B gambling media publisher?
I think for companies to understand that all these, like in a press release, if you're putting that all together and sending it out, that's one thing where it says industry leading this, top of the line that, that's the kind of stuff that you would expect to see in a press release. But besides that, when you're doing a feature, when you're doing something a bit more meaty, then it's like just leave that out. Just forget about all that kind of terminology altogether, because it's just taking up extra words, and it's going to get deleted anyway. So if it does get to the point where an email interview is what's done, then just drop all of that, because it's pointless.
Yeah, like you said, we're trying to help them, and they're trying to help us. It's, we scratch your back, they scratch ours, sort of thing. It's that particular scenario, isn't it? So
Yeah.
we're all in it together, and we're all there to make sure the magazine and your company is presented in a positive light and with a lot of thought behind it, and making the pieces more interesting. So yeah, at the end of the day, we're there to help you as you are to help us.
Yeah, I think moving forward, I think if a gambling publication shouldn't be afraid to be firm on occasion and say this needs to be changed. And the biggest takeaway is probably, as Matt says, for PR companies themselves, because something that's been said by the executives at this company is a press release needs to have a good story. The whole point is not to just republish the press release. It needs to have a good story, and it needs to get your attention, and then someone says, right, we need to report the news from that press release. Like Matt says, all the flowery language, and I have an issue with market leading as well. If every company's market leading, no one's market leading. So let's be smarter about it, guys.
It's ridiculous.
I think those two things, if publications can be firmer and PR companies can be a bit smarter, I think we can all work together a lot easier moving forward.
As we do at the end of interviews, anything we'd like to add?
No, my PR person will let you know. My agent will get back to you.
Send out a press release on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, listeners, we should say the final product that you're hearing today is after many emails after the event where the guys wanted to clarify what they were saying. So that's all for now from us, but certainly not all from Gambling Insider this summer. The July-August editions of Gambling Insider and Gaming America are out now, as is the July edition of our affiliate publication Trafficology. Coming up between now and G2E in October, we've got 3 Trafficologies: Gambling Insider September-October, Gaming America September-October, Sports Betting Focus, Global Gaming Awards, Las Vegas Shortlist Magazine, and our G2E preview. So keep checking out our mags and news at gamblinginsider.com as well as our GI Friday newsletter. We'll see you all again soon.